This is the Road Report with Steve Milton, presented by Hercules Tire.
This is Road Report on Ticats Audio Network. In Edmonton, I'm Steve Milton. Scott Milanovich will give us his quick take on what dangers an 0-6 and, frankly, desperate team like the Edmonton Elks can present. And because it's the day before game day, we'll talk a bit about who's playing this week who didn't play last week. The Ticats have made only a couple of changes to the 24 starters who dressed for and beat the Argos in last Saturday's nail-biter at Tim Hortons Field. Big Jordan Murray moves into the right tackle position for Brandon Kemp, who himself made his first start in nearly a year last week. He's on the one-game injured list. And tight end fullback Jevoni Robinson re-enters the lineup for Cameron McDonald. Jordan Murray started 9 games and the East Final at right tackle for the Ticats in 2021 and 7 games last year. And in between was on the Indianapolis Colts practice roster in 2022 when Milanovich was an integral part of the Colts coaching staff. Here's Milanovich's explanation of the roster change.
Yeah, just Jordan's been obviously been injured. He's played well for us in the past. He was who we had penciled in there before training camp, and we're happy he's healthy. Hope he brings some physicality to us. He's physicality. He's played a lot of football in his career. He's been here. He's been in the NFL a little bit. Just bring some nasty.
Robinson, meanwhile, has played 4 games in his rookie season as he learns the nuances of Canadian football. Remember that because he was born in Jamaica, Robinson is classified as a global player and not an American. Things like that can sometimes go into roster construction. Murray at 6'9" and Robinson at 6'8" are the 2 biggest Ticats starters. Edmonton brings their own 6'9" offensive lineman, Canadian guard Shane Richards, back into their lineup. It's the only starting lineup change for the Elks on either side of the ball from their outfit, which was edged yet again by Ottawa last weekend. They already had their own 6'9" starter in the lineup and defensive tackle Sean Oakman, who used to be a handful for the Ticats when he was an Argo for 3 years. Now, after the Tiger Cats deservedly beat the Argos last weekend to go to 1-5, there remains only one winless team in the CFL, and the Cats are hoping that's still the situation after Sunday night's game here in the Alberta capital. The 0-6 Elks, who've been struggling in almost every aspect of the organization the past couple of years, are having an inexplicable season, which they started aggressively addressing a couple of weeks ago by dismissing head coach and general manager Chris Jones and replacing him with head coach Jarius Jackson and general manager G. Roy Simon. The jury is still out, way out, on the effects of that as they dropped yet another close one to Ottawa a week ago Friday when Boris Beattie missed 3 field goals in the Red Blacks' 20-16 win. Just 5 days earlier, Beattie had to put a kickoff out of bounds late in the game to give Ottawa a golden chance to win 37-34, which in fact, and of course, they did. It's almost unbelievable what has befallen Edmonton this year. Coming off a lot of close losses last year, they had a streak this season already when they were beaten in 3 straight games by a field goal in the final minute. And all 6 of their games, all 6 of their losses, have been decided in the final 3 minutes. That's not a tendency, that's a plague. All week, Milanovich has said that 0-6 is not a comprehensive description of the Elks team that his team will face Sunday night at Commonwealth Stadium.
They've got talent. They got an elite returner. They got a guy that can kick the ball a mile. Quarterback can throw for 400 when he catches a heater. They got receivers. That defensively they got a good secondary. I think they're excellent linebacker. They can rush the passer. So it's a good football team. It's their record I don't think is who they might be.
Quarterback Bethel Thompson, who needs just 36 passing yards to reach 15,000 in his career, gets rid of the ball quickly and has some weapons at his disposal in the reconfigured Edmonton receiving corps, which has 4 players in the league's top 25 reception yard leaders. Dylan Mitchell is 7th overall at 27 receptions. Geno Lewis has 26. Curly Gittens Jr., the ex-Argo, has 37 for 309 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Hergy Mayala has 26 for 287 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now, here's some unsolicited advice for the Ticats defense. Stop Edmonton before they move too far upfield. The Elks have scored 12 touchdowns in 15 red zone opportunities, an 80% success rate, which leads the league. And Kevin Brown's rushing ability hasn't really been uncorked yet either. The Elks' Achilles heel has been their defense, particularly in the secondary, and that seems somewhat counterintuitive, given that they have two defensive backs with a couple of interceptions. Remember, the Ticats have nobody with more than one. Middle linebacker Niles Morgan is fourth in the league in tackles. Canadian defensive end Noah Curtis is tied for the CFL lead with 4 sacks, and Oakman always looms on the front four with him. But they did lose Antonio Alfano for the season, one of a number of impactful injuries. Take a listen to Milanovic on the Edmonton defense.
Yeah, I haven't really studied how many, how many return touchdowns they've had against them or whatever. I just studied their defense. And they've had a couple breaks in the secondary where they've had some explosives thrown on them, just like every team in the league. But they're not an untalented defense, I can tell you that.
Potential is one thing, though, and results are another, and there's no hiding from this. It's not just defense. Turnovers and runbacks have also played a role, but in 4 of their 6 games, the Elks have allowed at least 35 points. The Ticats have to exploit that weakness early and often, getting better offensive starts than they have in most of their games so far. Enter Bo Levi Mitchell, who is having a very strong year that is going relatively uncelebrated across the league, first because of the 0-5 start, and second because when the Ticats did crack that goose egg against the Argos last week, it wasn't Mitchell's best overall game, although after a flat first half, he did approach nearly 300 yards. Mitchell is on pace for a career-high 5,800-plus passing yards, and he's thrown at least 1 touchdown pass in all 6 of the games, and he's very comfortable playing against Edmonton. His 15-4 career mark against them, mostly with the rival Stampeders, admittedly, represents the most wins he's had against any CFL team. Mitchell is distributing the ball well and has developed a cement-like rapport with his entire receiving group, but needs to make a couple of better reads in the early going and connect on a tiny handful more of those times when he's overthrown an open receiver early, often Tim White or Keandre Smith. And of course, the Ticats have had some early drops in most games, and those are the kinds of things that take costly start-me-up points off the board. Those drops are happening in the defensive backfield too. But there are a lot of positive signs. They've been trying to get the ball into the hands of their playmakers, and James Butler had 33 touches over the past 2 games, totaling 238 yards from scrimmage. But after 119 yards in the opening game, Butler has been able to rush for only 114 yards since then, and has more yards receiving than he does rushing. And part of that has been because they've fallen behind early in a number of games, and part of that is that they've faced too many second and long situations, reducing the chance of a run. But the lack of a consistent ground-eating run game on first down has also contributed to that issue. The other marquee playmaker, Tim White, has 18 receptions in the last 3 games, running up 229 yards. As defenses start to notice Smith, Shamar Bridges, Stephen Dunbar Jr., and Luther Hakanavanu, the delayed crossing pattern has opened up for White. He had 1 completed underneath the secondary against the Argos and 1 behind the secondary later in the game. That's the kind of thing that can exploit the Elks secondary, which has been susceptible to surrendering the big yardage plays. Mitchell's and Milanovic offense needs to take advantage of that. The Hamilton secondary will be again without safety Stavros Katsantonis, who's still on the injury list, and that load will fall to rookie Robert Panabaker again. And as the Argos did last week, McLeod Thompson will go after the seams on either side of them. So halfbacks Kenneth George Jr. and Destin Talbot have to be as strong as they were against Toronto, when Talbot filled a gap quickly for a scoop and score touchdown, and George got a late interception. The Ticats made some tactical changes last week, having their defensive backs play tighter to their receivers sooner and longer, and they'll have to do that again against the quick-release McLeod, and especially, I think, around Geno Lewis, who is a master at putting his big body between the quarterback and the defender. Although Edmonton punter Jake Julian leads the league in punting average, the Ticats' Nick Constantinu is right behind him, and field goal kicker Mark Leggio has been almost automatic. He's one of the 5 CFL kickers over 90%, but Edmonton's Boris Beattie has been nowhere near that, at a league-low 62%. So a key is to keep Edmonton out of the red zone, where they've been good, and in long field goal range, where they have not. This is a homecoming for former Elks David Beard, the exemplary Ticat center, Stephen Dunbar Jr., running backs coach Calvin McCarty, and GM Ed Hervey, the last Edmonton GM to win a Grey Cup. And here's another welcome back bit. The Ticats have won their last 4 visits to Commonwealth Stadium. If they want to make it 5, they have to adopt a little recency bias. They have to remember how they felt when they were searching for their first win just a week ago and playing at home, how desperate they were, how they turned that desperation into motivation, and that motivation into confidence, and how strongly they broke from the gates on both sides of the ball. And then remember that the Elks are wearing almost exactly those same shoes this week in front of their home fans. It's important to shut the home team's offense down immediately and have your own offense fan the flames of doubt already licking their way up the walls of the Edmonton defense. With Ottawa and Montreal with 5 wins each and the Argos with 3 heading into Saturday night, it's imperative to not let the East teams lurch too far ahead. And with the possibility now of an East team crossing over for the playoffs to the West, games against teams like Winnipeg, Edmonton, and Calgary aren't quite 4-pointers yet, but they're pretty close. So that's it for Road Report. Join the Ticats audio network for lots of analysis beginning at 7:30 a.m. Sunday and continuing through the broadcast of the game and into the post-game show. I'll talk with you again on Monday's Ticats Today as we break down the results of Sunday night's game in Edmonton.
This has been the Road Report with Steve Milton, presented by Hercules Tire. Go to ticats.ca for more in-depth coverage of the Tiger Cats at home and on the road.